It began with a brutal attack, my brother-in-law, a bloody face, a dislocated shoulder. All because I wouldn't co-sign a mortgage. My sister? She just looked at me and said, "You should have signed the mortgage?" I managed to drag myself to my parents' door, collapsed, and what happened next stunned even the police. Try to imagine it. Your own sister, the one who swore to protect you, stands by as her husband beats you bloody, then tells you, "You should have just signed the mortgage." My name is Audrey, and this is my story. The emotional wound from that night cut far deeper than any physical one. Growing up in our modest Michigan neighborhood, my older sister Natalie was everything to me. 5 years my senior, she was my personal bodyguard, chasing away bullies, patiently helping me with homework. Our parents, an economics teacher and a hospital nurse, didn't have much money, but they instilled core values: education, hard work, and financial wisdom. Dad's mantra was always, save 6 months of expenses and never risk what you can't afford to lose. Those words shaped my financial habits. Natalie was more free-spirited with money, yet we remained incredibly close. I admired her confidence and natural charm. When she left for college, I truly missed her protective presence and our late-night talks. Years later, I followed her to college, funding my studies with scholarships and part-time work. While Natalie drifted between majors, I focused on business administration, captivated by how organizations functioned. After graduating, I started in marketing and steadily advanced, becoming an office manager by 29. My disciplined saving paid off last year when I bought my own 2-bedroom condo. It was a modest place, but it was mine, a tangible testament to my financial discipline. Natalie, however, chose a different path, cycling through various jobs, never quite settling. 3 years ago, she met Greg at a barbecue. Their romance was a whirlwind, engaged within 6 months. Their wedding was intimate but lovely, and as her maid of honor, I gave a heartfelt speech, welcoming Greg into our family. Initially, I genuinely liked Greg. He was charismatic, seemed to adore Natalie. His sales income fluctuated, but they appeared to manage. Natalie even took a part-time boutique job, which I thought was for discounts and socializing. Our family maintained strong bonds with Sunday dinners at my parents' home and shared holidays. But gradually, subtly, I noticed shifts in Natalie. My sister, who once loved thrift stores, now obsessed over designer brands. She'd hint that my practical car was too modest, suggesting I splurge on luxury. Greg frequently turned conversations to money, asking pointed questions about my salary or my condo's market value. I dismissed it as his sales nature completely, missing the red flags. 6 months ago, Greg mentioned, "Your sister and I are looking into investment properties. Real estate is where true wealth is built." My parents politely nodded but exchanged uneasy glances. Later, Dad pulled me aside. "Investment demands knowledge and caution, Audrey. I hope Greg understands that." Around this time, I began dating Tyler, a police officer I'd met after a small office break-in. He was kind, reliable, and shared my practical approach to life. Greg, however, seemed strangely competitive with Tyler, often interrupting him or belittling his career. Tyler noticed, but tactfully avoided conflict for my sake. Looking back, it's clear, Greg was sizing up my finances, while fabricating a prosperous image their reality couldn't sustain. Natalie was increasingly drawn into his mindset, where success meant possessions and family ties were mere resources to exploit. My 30th birthday, 4 months before everything imploded, was our last truly peaceful family gathering. My parents hosted a small dinner, and Natalie gave me a beautiful handmade bracelet, a relic from our childhood jewelry-making days. For a fleeting moment, I saw my old sister, the one who valued sentimental ties over possessions. I wish I'd known how swiftly our bond would shatter. The request that would ultimately devastate our family arrived on an ordinary Tuesday. Natalie called, her voice buzzing with excitement. "We have amazing news," she gushed, "and we want you to be the first to know." I arrived at their apartment with a bottle of wine, expecting a baby announcement. The place was immaculate, candles lit, a lavish meal prepared. Greg was uncharacteristically attentive, pulling out my chair, keeping my glass full. "So what's this big news?" I asked as Natalie served my favorite homemade tiramisu. Greg and Natalie exchanged knowing glances. Then he pulled out his phone, showing me photos of a stunning two-story colonial. We found our dream home, Natalie explained, her eyes sparkling. 4 bedrooms, a gourmet kitchen, an incredible soaking tub in the master bath. Wow, that's gorgeous, I replied sincerely. Are you seriously thinking of buying it? Not just thinking, Greg said, beaming. We made an offer yesterday, and it was accepted this morning. I nearly choked on my dessert. That house looked like it would cost at least $500,000, far beyond what their current jobs could support. Greg must have read my expression. I know what you're thinking, he said smoothly. But I'm in line for a major promotion. Next month, the regional director position is practically mine. This was news to me. In their 3 years of marriage, Greg had changed companies twice, always touting strategic moves that never quite delivered the success he predicted. That's great news, I said cautiously. When would you close? That's why we wanted to talk, Natalie interjected, reaching for my hand. With Greg's recent job change, the bank needs a little extra security. My stomach clenched. Greg continued, your credit score is excellent and you have the stable job history banks love. We just need you to co-sign as a guarantor on the mortgage. It's really just a formality. You wouldn't need to contribute anything financially. Their casual presentation of this immense request stunned me. Being a guarantor meant I'd be legally responsible for their mortgage if they defaulted. Given Greg's job instability and their clear overspending, this was anything but a formality. This is a huge decision, I said carefully. Can I have some time to think about it? To review the details? Annoyance flickered across Greg's face before he forced a smile. Of course, but we need to notify the bank by next week to lock in our interest rate. Driving home, my father's financial warnings replayed in my mind. The next day, I researched what being a mortgage guarantor truly entailed. The deeper I dug, the more alarmed I became. If Natalie and Greg missed payments, my credit would be ruined. If they defaulted entirely, I'd be responsible for their debt, potentially losing my own condo and savings. I immediately met with my financial advisor, Linda, who was blunt. Audrey, this is an enormous risk, she cautioned. Given their financial situation and job history, I strongly advise against it. 3 days later, hoping for a calm conversation. Without Greg, I invited Natalie for coffee at our favorite cafe. I approached the topic gently. I've been researching what being a guarantor means, I began. It's a far greater commitment than Greg suggested. Natalie slowly stirred her latte. I know it sounds scary, but we'd never put you in a bad spot, Audrey. Greg is definitely getting that promotion. But what if something unexpected happens? I pressed. What if the promotion falls through, or one of you faces a health issue? I just need to understand the contingency plan. There you go again, she sighed, always planning for the worst. Can't you just trust us? This house means everything. We want to start our family there. I do trust you, I assured her, but this is business, and mixing family with major financial commitments gets complicated. Perhaps there are other options, like waiting a few months until Greg actually secures the promotion. Disappointment clouded her face, but she nodded. I understand your concerns. I'll talk to Greg about alternatives. I couldn't have known then how impossible that balance would become. 2 weeks passed in an uncomfortable silence between Natalie and me. I tried reaching out, suggesting lunch or our usual weekend shopping, but received only brief, non-committal replies. Then, on a Tuesday morning, my phone rang as I prepared for a staff meeting. Audrey, it's me. Natalie's voice was strained. The bank needs an answer by Friday. Greg and I have been patient, but we need to know if you're going to help us. I've given this a lot of thought, I began carefully, and I just don't think I can take on that level of financial risk right now. Risk? What risk? Her tone sharpened. This isn't about risk, Audrey. This is about family loyalty. Remember when I loaned you $300 for your car repair in college? I didn't ask questions or worry about risk. The comparison between a small Short-term loan and a 30-year mortgage guarantee was so absurd I was momentarily speechless. Before I could respond, Natalie continued, "Mom and Dad are disappointed too. They raised us to support each other." This surprised me. Have they said that to you directly? They didn't have to. It's obvious how family is supposed to work, she retorted. Greg says your boyfriend is probably poisoning you against us. Tyler has never liked Greg. The conversation spiraled, ending with Natalie in tears and me feeling guilty and manipulated. I immediately called my parents. As I suspected, they'd never expressed disappointment. In fact, they'd told Natalie and Greg to respect my choice. The next escalation came without warning. 2 days later, during interviews for a new administrative assistant, my receptionist announced visitors. In the lobby, I found Natalie and Greg, formally dressed as if from a business meeting. "We need to talk," Greg stated firmly.
It can't.
Wait. Acutely aware of my professional setting, I led them to a small conference room. "I'm in the middle of interviews. What's so urgent?" Greg placed a folder on the table. "We brought the mortgage paperwork. All we need is your signature, and we can stop bothering you." I told Natalie my decision, I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I'm sorry, but it hasn't changed." Greg's face hardened. "Do you have any idea what this house means to us? To your sister? This is our future, our family we're talking about." "I understand, but there are other houses, other options." "That wouldn't require a guarantor," I countered. "We don't want other options." His voice rose, making me glance anxiously at the door, hoping my colleagues couldn't hear. "This is the house we want, the neighborhood we need for our future kids. Are you really going to deny your future nieces and nephews a safe place to grow up?" The emotional manipulation was now overt. Natalie sat silently, letting Greg lead the attack. When she finally spoke, her words stunned me. "If you can't do this one thing for me, Audrey, then maybe we need to reevaluate our relationship. Sisters are supposed to be there for each other no matter what." I felt physically ill. "Natalie, this isn't about not wanting to help you. This is about making a sound financial decision that protects all of us." "Protects you, do you mean?" Greg sneered. "Always looking out for yourself first, right?" When they finally left, I was shaking. I called Tyler during my lunch break and described the ambush. "This is getting out of hand," he said, concern evident in his voice. "They're using emotional blackmail to pressure you into a legally binding financial commitment. Have you considered talking to a lawyer?" "A lawyer," I protested. "They're family, not criminals." "Audrey, financial coercion is a real thing, and Greg's behavior is raising serious concerns. Just be careful, okay? And maybe document these interactions going forward." That weekend, my parents hosted dinner, hoping to ease the tension. The atmosphere was strained from the moment Natalie and Greg arrived. My mother valiantly tried to maintain normal conversation. During dessert, Natalie deliberately brought up the house. "We might lose our dream home because some people don't understand family commitment," she announced, glaring at me. My father frowned. "Natalie, we agreed not to discuss this tonight." "Why not? It's all that matters right now," she insisted. "Audrey is being selfish, and everyone's tiptoeing around it." "Financial decisions are personal," my mother interjected gently. "Your sister has the right to make her own choices about legal commitments." "So you're taking her side too?" Natalie's voice cracked with emotion. "There are no sides here," Dad said firmly. "Just different perspectives on a business decision." Greg put his arm around Natalie. "Come on, babe. It's clear where everyone stands. Your sister has her precious financial security, and we lose our future. But hey, at least she doesn't have to risk anything for family." The evening ended on that bitter note, with Natalie and Greg leaving abruptly. As they drove away, my mother squeezed my hand. "Stay strong, sweetheart. This isn't really about the house. There's something else going on with them." Her intuition proved correct. The following week, I started getting strange calls about unauthorized credit checks. My bank contacted me about unusual account activity. Someone was trying to access my financial information, making me wonder if Greg was trying to gain leverage. My anxiety mounted. I struggled to sleep. Tyler noticed the toll it was taking and urged additional security measures, changing all passwords, setting up fraud alerts. This isn't normal family disagreement anymore, he warned.
Greg is showing signs of financial desperation, which
Can be dangerous. Seeking clarity, I scheduled another meeting with my financial advisor. Linda, with access to industry databases, conducted a deeper investigation with my permission. Audrey, there are serious red flags, she stated gravely. During our meeting, Greg has significant undisclosed debt, multiple maxed-out credit cards, a personal loan in collections, and a previous mortgage default from before his marriage to your sister. If you were to become their guarantor, you'd be taking on far more risk than you realize. This information stunned me. Did Natalie know about Greg's financial history? Was this why they were so desperate for my guarantee? Either my sister was being deceived or was complicit in hiding this. Armed with this knowledge, I made my final decision. I would refuse the guarantor request. I spent an evening preparing an information packet for Natalie and Greg, including alternative financing options, listings for more affordable homes, and resources for first-time homebuyer programs. I truly believed that by offering solutions instead of just rejection, I could preserve my sisterly bond while protecting myself financially. It was an approach born of hope and familial love, but it severely underestimated Greg's desperation and the extent to which Natalie had relinquished her independent judgment to her husband. It was a quiet Thursday evening when everything erupted. I had just finished organizing the information packet for Natalie and Greg Professional, tabbed, highlighted options. I felt good offering solutions instead of just a rejection, hoping to mend the rift and maintain my financial boundaries. I'd even ordered Natalie's favorite Thai food, hoping to decompress after weeks of tension. At 9:30 p.m., aggressive pounding on my door startled me. Through the peephole, I saw Greg's face, distorted with rage. Natalie stood behind him, arms tightly crossed, looking tense. "Audrey, open the door. We know you're in there," Greg shouted, pounding again. My heart raced, not answering felt impossible. The noise would disturb my neighbors. I thought of Tyler, but he was on a night shift. Just a minute. I called, quickly texting my location to Tyler. "Greg here, very angry," before unlatching. "The security chain. What's going on? Why are you pounding on my door so late?" Greg's face was flushed, his eyes bloodshot. "Take off the chain, Audrey. We need to talk. It's late. Can this wait until tomorrow?" "I actually have some information I was going to bring over this weekend." "Tomorrow?" Greg laughed bitterly. "There is no tomorrow. The bank called. We lost the house because you were too selfish to help us." Before I could respond, he slammed his shoulder against the door, shattering the security chain. I stumbled backward as Greg lunged into my apartment, Natalie following, pale but resolute. "Greg, you need to leave right now," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, reaching for my phone. "This is not okay." He snatched my phone, throwing it across the room where it shattered against the wall. "Nothing about this is okay. Do you have any idea what you've done to us? To your sister?" "I didn't do anything to you," I protested, backing away. "I just couldn't take on the financial risk of being your guarantor, but I've been researching alternatives that might work better." I gestured toward the folder on my dining table. Greg followed my gaze, strode over, and flipped through the contents. "Cheaper houses? First-time buyer programs." His voice dripped with contempt. "You think we want your charity, your condescending little solutions?" He grabbed the folder and hurled it against the wall, scattering papers across my living room floor. "Greg, please." Natalie finally spoke. But not to restrain him. "Let's just go. She's made her choice." "No, I want her to understand what she has done," Greg insisted, turning back to me. "You know what the real estate agent told us today? That the sellers accepted another offer. Do you know why? Because they got tired of waiting for our financing to come through. Financing that would have been secured weeks ago if you had just signed the papers." His face was inches from mine, spittle flying as he shouted. I could smell alcohol on his breath. "I'm sorry you lost the house," I said, trying to de-escalate. "But there will be other houses, better ones you can afford without needing a guarantor." "Afford?" Greg's laugh was ugly. "You think you know everything about our finances, about what we can afford?" "Actually, I do know some things. I said, my fear transforming into anger. I know about the maxed out credit cards, Greg, and the personal loan and collections, and your previous mortgage default. The color drained from his face. You had no right to look into my financial history. I had every right when you were asking me to guarantee hundreds of thousands of dollars, I countered. Did Natalie know about all this? Did you tell her? Before you pressured me to put my financial future on the line. I looked at my sister, whose expression had shifted from resolve to confusion. Natalie, did you know? Don't talk to her. Greg growled, stepping between us. This is between you and me now. No, it's not. I insisted, trying to move around him to see my sister. Natalie deserves to know the truth if she doesn't already. This isn't just about a house. Greg has serious financial problems he's been hiding. Shut up, Greg roared. Before I could react, his hand shot out, shoving me hard against the wall. The back of my head hit with a sickening thud, momentarily disorienting me. Greg, Natalie gasped, but made no move to intervene. I tried to push away from the wall, but Greg grabbed my shoulders and slammed me back again. Pain exploded through my right shoulder as something gave way with an audible pop. I screamed in agony, which only seemed to further enrage him. You think you're so much better than us with your perfect credit score and your responsible job. He snarled, his face inches from mine. Always judging, always thinking you know best. I instinctively raised my good arm to protect my face, but he caught my wrist and twisted it painfully. Stop it! You're hurting me! I cried out, looking desperately toward my sister. Natalie, please help me. What happened next was a blur of motion and pain. Greg's fist connected with my face, the impact sending a shockwave through my skull. I tasted blood as my lips split open. Another blow caught my cheekbone, and I felt something crunch. Warm liquid flowed down my face as I collapsed to the floor, my dislocated shoulder sending waves of agony through my body. Through tear-blurred vision, I saw Natalie standing frozen, hands covering her mouth, watching as her husband assaulted her sister. I reached toward her with my good arm. Natalie, please, I begged. She finally moved, taking a single step forward. Greg, that's enough. Let's go. Not to help me, not to stop him, just to leave. Greg stepped back, breathing heavily, looking down at me with contempt rather than remorse. You brought this on yourself, he spat. As they moved toward the door, I choked out, Natalie, how can you let him do this? My sister paused in the doorway, her face a mask I couldn't recognize. The stranger wearing my sister's face looked at me coldly and said the words that would haunt me. You should have just signed the mortgage. Then they were gone, leaving me bleeding on my apartment floor, betrayed by the person I had trusted. Most my entire life. The physical pain was excruciating, but it paled in comparison to the shattering of my heart. As I realized the sister I loved had chosen to side with my attacker rather than help me in my moment of greatest need. I don't know how long I lay on my apartment floor, cycling between shock and waves of agony. Blood from my face pooled beside me. Every slight movement sent searing pain through my dislocated shoulder. My phone lay shattered where Greg had thrown it, useless for help. Eventually, pure survival instinct overrode the pain. I needed medical attention. Using only my left arm, I dragged myself to a sitting position against the wall, fighting waves of dizziness and nausea. My apartment swam in and out of focus as I assessed my grim options. My neighbors, mostly young professionals, kept to themselves. Screaming for help might work, but I wasn't sure I could make enough noise. My landline had been disconnected months ago. The only viable option was to somehow get to my car and drive to my parents' house about 15 minutes away. Each movement was an agonizing ordeal as I crawled to where my purse had fallen. Finding my keys brought tears of relief. Getting to my feet nearly made me black out. I clung to the wall for minutes, breathing through clenched teeth until the room stabilized. The journey from my second-floor apartment to the parking lot was a nightmare of pain and sheer will. I could only use the railing with my left hand, meaning I descended sideways, one excruciating step at a time. Twice my knees buckled and I nearly fell. By the time I reached my car, my blouse was soaked with blood and sweat. Driving one-handed. With a dislocated shoulder and possible concussion was dangerous, but I saw no alternative. I drove slowly, focusing intently on the road through my one unswollen eye. Each traffic light was an eternity, every bump a fresh jolt of pain. I talked aloud to myself, forcing consciousness. Almost there, just a few more blocks. Stay awake, keep driving. The 15-minute drive took nearly 40, as I fought disorientation and agony. When I finally turned onto my parents' street, overwhelming relief washed over me. Their porch light was a beacon in my darkest hour. I parked haphazardly in their driveway and staggered to the front door. My attempt to ring the doorbell ended with me slumping against the doorframe, my strength gone. I weakly knocked, leaving. Blood smears on the white paint. The porch light seemed to intensify painfully. I heard my father's voice. "Who is it?" "Dad," I managed to whisper. "It's me." The door swung open, and I'll never forget the horror that contorted my parents' faces. My mother's scream seemed distant. "Audrey, oh my God, what happened to you?" My father's strong arms caught me as my legs finally gave out. "Greg," I slurred through swollen lips. "He attacked me." Natalie watched. That was all I could manage. Before collapsing completely, the safety of my childhood home finally allowed me to surrender to the pain and shock. I vaguely registered being gently lowered to the floor as my mother frantically dialed 911. "My daughter's been assaulted." I heard her sob. "She's bleeding badly and her shoulder looks dislocated. Please hurry." My father's voice was tight, with suppressed rage and fear as he knelt beside me, carefully cradling my head. "Who did this, Audrey? Did you say Greg?" I tried to nod, sending fresh pain through my skull. "Mortgage," I mumbled, because I wouldn't sign. "Dear God, my—" Mother wept, joining us on the floor. Her face is barely recognizable. The wait for the ambulance felt endless. My mother held a cold compress to my face while my father kept talking, trying to keep me conscious. The flashing lights of emergency vehicles finally pulsed red and blue. Through the room, 2 police officers arrived with the paramedics. As the medical team assessed my injuries, one officer knelt beside me. "Ma'am, can you tell me who did this to you?" His voice was gentle but professional. "Greg Walsh," I whispered. "My sister's husband. And where did this happen?" "My apartment about an hour ago." The officer's face hardened as he saw the extent of my injuries. "And you drove yourself here in this condition?" I managed a slight nod. "Jesus," he muttered, catching himself. "I mean, that shows incredible strength, ma'am. We'll need a formal statement, but let's get you medical attention first." As paramedics transferred me to a gurney, I heard the officer speaking quietly to his partner. "Call it in. Aggravated assault, possibly attempted murder given the extent of injuries. Suspect is Gregory Walsh, brother-in-law victim." The ambulance ride was a blur of pain and medical jargon, blood pressure dropping, possible orbital fracture, dislocated shoulder, concussion protocol. They gave me something for the pain, softening the world's edges without removing me entirely. Sometime during this medical whirlwind, Tyler appeared, still in his police uniform, his face ashen as he took in my condition. He must have come straight from his shift after seeing my text. "Audrey," he choked, taking my hand gently. "I'm so sorry. I got your message, but I was handling an accident scene. By the time I was free and tried to call, you didn't answer." "Not your fault," I managed through swollen lips. His professional demeanor cracked. I saw tears in his eyes before he blinked them away. "The responding officers are colleagues. They're already looking for Greg. Do you want me to step out while you give your statement, or would you like me to stay?" "Stay," I whispered. "Please stay." The detective who took my initial statement was compassionate but thorough, recording every detail. When I described Natalie's reaction and her parting words, his pen paused. "Your sister witnessed the entire assault and did nothing to intervene or call for help?" "Yes," I confirmed, the betrayal still raw. She watched, then left with him. My parents arrived after giving their own statements about my condition when I reached their home. My father's face was tight with controlled fury, my mother's streaked with tears. They spoke with the doctors, arranged my overnight admission for concussion observation, and assured me they'd handle everything. As the pain medication finally drew me towards sleep, I heard Tyler speaking quietly with my parents in the hospital room. "This goes beyond a domestic dispute," he was saying. The level of violence, the premeditation in going to her apartment, breaking in. Essentially, we're looking at serious felony charges. "And Natalie?" my mother asked, her voice breaking. "Our own daughter watched this happen and did nothing." "There may be charges for her as well," Tyler replied grimly. "At minimum, failure to report a crime, possibly accessory after the fact. How did we not see this coming?" My father's voice was hollow with guilt. How did we miss what kind of man he truly was? "Abusers are often skilled at presenting different faces," Tyler explained gently. "And financial desperation can trigger violence in people with underlying control issues." Their voices faded as I drifted into a medicated sleep, my last conscious thought a bewildered wonder at how utterly my life had shattered in a single evening, and how the sister I had loved my entire life had become a stranger, watching me bleed without lifting a finger to help. The morning after the assault brought the harsh reality of hospital lights and sterile disinfectant. My parents were already there. My mother dozing, my father rigid with suppressed rage. A nurse checked my vitals and changed my facial dressing. She held up a mirror, and I hardly recognized the stranger staring back. My right eye was swollen shut, surrounded by deep purple bruising across my cheekbone. Stitches zigzagged across my eyebrow and upper lip. My face was so distorted it looked like a grotesque caricature. "The swelling will go down significantly," the nurse kindly assured me. "And the plastic surgeon did an excellent job. The scars should be minimal." Scars? I would carry scars from this. Physical reminders of my sister's betrayal visible every time I looked in a mirror. The thought brought fresh tears that stung my cuts. Mid-morning, 2 police officers arrived, not Tyler, to avoid a conflict of interest. 1. Detective Sarah Martinez of the Domestic Violence Unit introduced herself. Her partner, Officer Jenkins, had kind eyes contrasting with his imposing presence. "Miss Moore, I know this is difficult, but we need your formal statement about last night," Detective Martinez explained. "We'll also need to photograph your injuries if that's all right." For the next hour, I recounted every detail, from Greg pounding on my door to Natalie's final devastating comment. Officer Jenkins meticulously photographed my extensive bruising, his jaw tightening. "Have they found Greg yet?" I asked. Detective Martinez shook her head. "Not yet, but officers are at their apartment and your sister's workplace. An alert is out for his vehicle. We will find him. And my sister?" The officers exchanged glances. "We'd like to speak with her as well. Her role in this incident needs clarification." After they left, my father finally spoke. "The locksmith is changing your apartment locks today. You'll stay with us until we figure out something more permanent." "Dad, I can't impose," I protested. "This isn't a discussion, Audrey," he said firmly. "That man knows where you live. Until he's in custody, you are not staying alone." His fierce protectiveness nearly broke me. Where was this protection when I was being beaten? Why had Natalie shown not even a fraction of this concern? The next few days blurred with medical evaluations, pain management, and paperwork. I was discharged with my arm in a sling, prescriptions, and concussion recovery instructions. The prosecutor's office contacted me, making it clear they would press charges regardless of my wishes, given the assault's severity. "This level of violence cannot go unanswered," the assistant district attorney explained during her hospital visit. "The state has an interest in prosecuting violent offenders, family connections notwithstanding." On my 3rd day home, police apprehended Greg and Natalie at a motel 30 miles out of town. The news brought conflicting emotions: relief he was in custody, but fresh pain realizing my sister chose to flee with my attacker rather than check if I was alive. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following week. Meanwhile, with tremendous heartache, I filed for a restraining order against both Greg and Natalie. The court granted it immediately, based on the police report and medical documentation. My colleagues were incredibly supportive, arranging remote work during my recovery. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months rallied, dropping off meals and offering rides. Tyler was my rock, his steady presence a balm to my shattered security. The night before the preliminary hearing, my mother received a call from Natalie, putting it on speakerphone for Dad and me. "Mom, this has all gone too far." Natalie's voice was thin and desperate. "Greg made a mistake, but Audrey's blowing this out of proportion. She needs to drop these charges." My father made a strangled sound of disbelief. My mother's voice was ice cold. "A mistake? Your husband broke into your sister's home and beat her so severely she needed hospitalization. She drove herself here with a concussion and dislocated shoulder because you left her bleeding on the floor." "You don't understand," Natalie pleaded. "Greg's lost his job over this. We could lose everything. And Audrey could have lost her life," my father erupted. "Have you seen what he did to her face, to her body? Your sister may have permanent damage to her eye socket." "I know it looks bad," Natalie admitted, "but if she drops the charges, Greg will get anger management counseling." "Natalie, listen to me carefully," my mother said. "Your husband committed a serious crime. He belongs in jail. If you continue to support him after what he did, you are no daughter of mine." The silence was deafening. When Natalie finally spoke, her voice was cold. "I see who you have chosen. Don't expect to hear from us again unless Audrey comes to her senses." The line went dead, leaving us in stunned silence. My mother's hand shook as she placed the phone down. My father wrapped an arm around her as she sobbed. "How did we raise a daughter who could be so cruel?" she whispered. "Where did we go wrong with her?" "This isn't your fault," I said, reaching for her hand. "Greg's been manipulating her for years. We just didn't see it clearly until now." The preliminary hearing the next day was my first time seeing Greg and Natalie since the attack. Entering the courtroom with Tyler and my parents flanking me, I felt physically ill. Greg sat beside his attorney in a suit that seemed deliberately oversized, perhaps to make him appear less threatening. Natalie sat directly behind him, her face a mask of resentment. When the bailiff read the charges, aggravated assault, breaking and entering, criminal threatening, attempted coercion, the gravity finally registered on Greg's face. His attorney entered a not guilty plea, requesting bail despite the prosecutor's argument that Greg was a flight risk and danger to the community. The judge set bail at $100,000 with strict conditions: GPS monitoring and explicit no-contact orders with me or my family. As Greg was led away, Natalie caught my eye across the courtroom. There was no remorse in her gaze, only cold accusation, as if I were the one who had destroyed our family. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered, alerted by police records. My father shielded me while Tyler helped me into the car. That evening, the local news featured my bruised face, evidence of the violence erupting from what they called a family financial dispute. Over the following weeks, as my physical injuries began to mend, the emotional trauma intensified. I started seeing a therapist specializing in physical trauma and family betrayal. She diagnosed me with PTSD, explaining my sister's betrayal had compounded the trauma. When someone we trust implicitly harms us or allows it, it damages our fundamental ability to feel safe, she explained. Recovery involves not just healing from the event, but rebuilding your sense of safety and trust. Greg's attorney approached my lawyer with a plea offer. Greg would plead guilty to simple assault if I agreed not to make a victim impact statement. I refused immediately. The full truth needed to be on record, not just for my healing, but to ensure Greg faced appropriate consequences. As the trial date neared, Natalie's pressure intensified. She sent letters to our parents, claiming I was destroying the family over one bad moment, and tried contacting my friends, painting me as vindictive and exaggerating my injuries. When these efforts failed, she showed up at my parents' house. Late one night, hysterical, demanding to see me. My father called the police, reporting her for violating the restraining order. Officers found Natalie pounding on the door, screaming that I had ruined her life. Her arrest for violating the protective order was the final fracture in our already splintered family. The trial itself was mercifully brief. The evidence was overwhelming: my medical records, injury photographs, my testimony, and most damning, security footage from my apartment hallway showing Greg breaking in and Natalie following him without coercion. The prosecutor also presented evidence of Greg's financial deception, documentation of hidden debt, and his previous mortgage default, which have fueled his desperate attempt to secure my guarantee. When it was my turn to testify, I looked directly at Greg as I detailed the attack. Then I turned to Natalie and recounted her final words as I lay bleeding. "You should have just signed the mortgage." The courtroom fell silent at this revelation of callousness. Greg's attorney tried to paint the incident as a momentary loss of control by an otherwise upstanding citizen under financial stress. The strategy failed spectacularly when the prosecution presented evidence of Greg's previous unreported anger incidents. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all counts. At the sentencing hearing 2 weeks later, the judge minced no words. "Mr. Walsh, you committed a brutal assault against a family member who simply refused to put herself in financial jeopardy for your benefit. You have shown no genuine remorse, and the court is particularly disturbed by your attempt to minimize your actions." The court sentenced Greg to 8 years in state prison. As Greg was led away in handcuffs, Natalie's anguished cry echoed through the courtroom, not for me, her sister, still bearing the scars of her husband's violence, but for the man who inflicted them. In that moment, I accepted what I'd been fighting to deny. The sister I had loved was gone, replaced by someone I no longer knew or wanted in my life. Outside the courthouse, surrounded by my parents, Tyler, and friends who had supported me, I faced the reporter cameras with my head held high, my scars visible, a testament to violence endured and justice achieved. 6 months after the sentencing, physical therapy had largely restored my shoulder's function, though some movements still caused twinges of pain. The plastic surgeon had done remarkable work on my face, yet a thin white line above my right eyebrow and another at the corner of my lip remained, visible reminders of that night. The deeper scars, invisible to others, healed more slowly. My parents helped me find a new apartment in a secure building with 24-hour security and no public access to resident floors. Initially, I resisted such extreme measures, not wanting to live in fear. But my therapist helped me distinguish between fear and prudent caution. "Creating physical safety is an essential part of your healing journey," she explained. "It's not about living in fear, but respecting your body's need for security while your mind processes the trauma." The nightmares decreased from nightly occurrences to perhaps once a week. I no longer jumped at unexpected knocks or flinched when voices rose in excitement. These were small, hard-won victories, achieved through consistent therapy and unwavering support. Tyler had been my constant rock throughout recovery, never pushing, always present. Our relationship deepened through the crisis, his patience and understanding creating a safe space for my healing. 3 months after the trial, he surprised me with a weekend getaway to a lakeside cabin. There, for the first time since the attack, I truly relaxed.
"I'm proud of you," he said as we watched the sunset.
"Not just for surviving, but for how you've handled everything. Your strength amazes me every day." My career became another anchor. 2 months after the trial, I received an unexpected promotion to operations director, a role with greater responsibility and the flexibility to continue my therapy. My colleagues, who had rallied during my darkest days, celebrated this professional advancement as another step forward. Natalie remained a complex absence. After Greg's sentencing, she moved in with a friend, unable to afford their apartment, on her part-time income. According to my mother, who maintained minimal contact, Natalie finally filed for divorce 3 months into Greg's sentence when their financial reality became undeniable. One rainy Tuesday, I received a letter in her handwriting. For several minutes, I simply held it, unsure if opening it would be progress or a setback. Eventually, curiosity prevailed. "Audrey," the letter began, "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve to ask for it, but I need you to know I'm getting help now. My therapist says I was in an emotionally abusive relationship that distorted my thinking and loyalties. That is not an excuse for what I did or failed to do that night. Nothing can excuse that. I just want you to know I'm trying to understand how I became someone who could watch her sister be hurt and do nothing. If you ever want to talk, I would welcome it. If not, I understand. Either way, I'm sorry, Natalie. The letter stirred complicated emotions. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as too little, too late. Another part recognized the courage it took to acknowledge such a profound moral failure. I showed it to my therapist. "How does this letter make you feel?" she asked. "Confused," I admitted. Part of me wants to believe she's genuinely sorry, that the sister I grew up with is still in there. But I also don't know if I can ever trust her again, or if I even want to try. Reconciliation is not an obligation, she reminded me. It is a choice, and one that should be made based on what supports your healing, not on family expectations or guilt. Whatever you decide, it should be on your timeline, not hers. I decided not to respond immediately, giving myself permission to sit with the complexity of my feelings without forcing a resolution. This was one of many new boundaries I was learning to establish. My parents had their own healing journey. The fracture in their family left them questioning their parenting, their values, even their understanding of their children. They started attending a support group for parents of adult children in crisis, finding solace and wisdom in shared experiences. "We always thought family meant supporting each other no matter what," my father reflected during a quiet dinner. "Now we understand that true support sometimes means holding people accountable, even when it hurts." My mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "We will always regret not seeing the warning signs with Greg, but we are so proud of how you've handled this, Audrey. You showed us what real strength looks like." As my confidence rebuilt, I felt drawn to share what I'd learned. 6 months after the trial, I approached the local community college about hosting a financial education workshop specifically for women. The focus was on financial independence as a form of self-protection, covering everything from building emergency funds to understanding the legal implications of co-signed loans and joint accounts. The first workshop drew 30 participants. By the third monthly session, we needed a larger venue to accommodate over 70 women. Some came from the local domestic violence shelter, others were students or working professionals. The common thread was a desire for financial knowledge as a pathway to security and independence. Tyler attended the fourth workshop, sitting quietly in the back. Afterward, as I gathered my materials, he approached with a small velvet box. "I was going to plan some elaborate proposal," he said, his voice uncharacteristically nervous. "But watching you tonight, seeing how you've transformed your pain into purpose, I couldn't wait another day to ask you to share your life with me." The ring was simple and elegant, a single diamond in a classic setting. It represented everything I had come to value: clarity, strength, and enduring beauty that emerges from pressure. My immediate instinct was to say yes, but I paused, honoring my promise to myself about making deliberate, rather than reactive, decisions. "Can I think about it?" I asked gently. "Not because I don't love you, but because I want to be sure I'm saying yes for the right reasons, not from fear or dependency." His smile was tender with understanding. "Take all the time you need. The question will still be here when you're ready." 2 weeks later, after deep reflection and a candid discussion with my therapist about healthy versus reactive relationship choices, I gave him my answer over dinner at my new apartment. The yes came not from fear or need, but from a place of strength and genuine choice. As spring turned to summer, I found myself volunteering at the domestic violence shelter whose residents had attended my workshops. Once a week I sat with women whose stories echoed aspects of my own, offering not just practical advice, but living proof that survival and rebuilding were possible. "The hardest lesson I learned," I told a group, "was that family is not defined by blood or obligation. True family consists of people who protect rather than endanger you, who respect your boundaries rather than demand their violation, who value your well-being as much as their own desires." 1 year to the day after the attack, I stood before the bathroom mirror and truly looked at my scars. The physical marks had faded significantly, though they would never disappear completely. I traced the thin white line above my eyebrow gently, no longer seeing it as a mark of victimhood, but as evidence of survival. That evening, Tyler and I hosted a small dinner party at my apartment, a deliberate reclaiming of space that had once been violated. My parents were there, along with close friends and colleagues who had supported my recovery. Conspicuously absent was Natalie, though I had finally responded to her letter the week before, suggesting we meet for coffee someday soon, a small opening toward whatever new relationship might be possible. As we raised glasses in a toast, I looked around at these people who had become my chosen family, who had demonstrated through actions, not just words, what love and support truly meant. The journey had been brutal, the loss was profound. But standing there, surrounded by genuine connection, I recognized the precious wisdom that had emerged from trauma, to boundaries that protect, courage that rebuilds, and love that respects. I offered as a toast. And to all of you who showed me what true family means. Later, as guests departed and Tyler helped clean up, he asked if I was okay, noticing my momentary quiet reflection. I'm more than okay, I realized aloud. For the first time since it happened, I feel genuinely at peace. Not because everything is perfect or all wounds are healed, but because I know now that I can trust myself to protect what matters, to choose wisely and to rebuild no matter what falls apart.